Nothing like a good single malt scotch to get you going. So, all right, welcome back to my year in review video. This is for 2024. Before we jump into the highlight reels here, I just want to say a couple of quick things here at the start. First off, you might remember that 1 year ago, together, we published my first book, Treks to Nowhere. As I talked about back then, this is a big passion project of mine. I've spent over a decade working on this, and it was really cool to publish it together. And in the last year, I've sold a few hundred copies of it, and I appreciate every one of you that picked up a copy. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I'm working on a second book now. I'm about 5 chapters into a new book that I'm very excited to write, and it's a memoir of my journey through the Barkley Marathons. And so if you follow this channel, you'll know I participated in that event back in 2012, and I was one of the finishers. I was featured in the documentary film, The Race That Eats Its Young, and I've received a lot of questions about my whole journey through that race and the lead up to it, and of course what happened afterward. And so I decided to put it all down on paper. So the next thing I want to say has to do with the channel. So really briefly, we're at something like 6,500, 6,800 subscribers, which is fantastic. I appreciate each and every one of you for following along. But I will say that in this last year, you may have noticed that things have kind of slowed down a little bit. And I think that's just sort of a natural evolution of anyone who does a YouTube channel as a hobby and not as a career or as a gig. This has always just been a fun thing for me, something I enjoy. And it started to kind of get to that point where it no longer was fun. It felt more like a chore, more like a job. And I never wanted that. It was always just a way for me to share stories with all of you. And that's really the only reason that I wanted to have a channel, was to tell stories, to share my adventures, and to hopefully pass on whatever knowledge I can to any of you who are also interested in through hiking or motorcycling or ultra running or whatever. Going on a trek to the geographic center of Arizona, or climbing a 14er, or going on a moto camping trip, right? It wasn't meant to be, this is how you change your oil in a CRF 300L. So I'm glad I've made those videos, and I'm glad that I've gotten so much feedback about that kind of stuff and that it's been helpful to all of you out there. But if you're curious as to why I've sort of been a little bit more distant, I think that's probably why. And I'm probably going to kind of stay at this level for a while as I also juggle my full-time job and family commitments and sort of just other things that I'm trying to do, like write a book and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening in the next couple of months, and I've got some really interesting things planned for next year. Lots of running. I've been running a lot of miles, 50 miles a week for the last 4 months or so. I've been doing a lot of races. So I've really been getting back into shape. I've shed a bunch of weight and I feel really fit right now. Lastly, I guess I would just extend an invite to anybody that's happens to be in the Southwest. If you're ever in northern Arizona and you just want to go for a hike, or you want to explore the Grand Canyon, or you want to go for a motorcycle ride, or you want me to show you some trails and you're around, let me know. Feel free to drop me a line if you're in the area, and I'd be happy to go explore and share in my adventures with any of you that are interested. So with that, let's go back and revisit the year. So last October, obviously I posted our yearly update video, and the very first video that I posted after that was I went up to Harding Point with the new CRF 300 LS, and I put all my camping gear on there, and I went up for a night and set up sort of my minimalist setup and just enjoyed a whole lot of nothing. After that, the next big thing that I started to dive into was this epic journey of trying to reach the geographic center of Arizona. And as you all know, this was a major undertaking. It took me 4 attempts. I just published a podcast episode about this. So that's the other thing that I just want to remind you all is Treks to Nowhere is not only a book, but I've now put out 2 successful seasons of the podcast. So if you're interested in hearing about all of my adventure stories in a different format, there are now 50 episodes of my treks to nowhere. Many of them are taken right from the book, but then there's a whole second season, and now I'm starting to put together the third season. So check that out. But one of the major episodes was about this journey to the center of Arizona. And so I published 2 videos right away that were sort of my first and second attempts at trying to reach the geographic center. And both attempts failed, mostly because I ran out of time. And so that's what we did for a little while. And then I put out a video of my tentative plans for 2024. And it's kind of fun going back and looking at this now, because I had some pretty bold plans for this year, and I didn't really get to a lot of them. One of the big plans that I had was to do a 1,500 mile bun burner saddle sore ride, which I never did, sadly. I almost did it last weekend, actually, but decided not to. So the next video I put out was a detailed video of sort of the rationale as to why I decided to buy the CRF 300 LS as opposed to the Rally. This is a question that I get a lot. This is a question that I struggled with. So I decided to put a video out where I really explain where my thinking was. Following that, in December, right around the new year, I took a trip up to the Hochdörfer Hills, which is one of the high points in the area. And I spent a whole day exploring some of the peaks in that group, Hochdörfer, Hummingbird, and just had a grand old time before the snows really started to set in. In February, I took a trip out on the CRF, first trip of the year after the bike was in storage for a little while, and just went down to Oak Creek Canyon, which is just down the road. And mostly I was just giggling and excited to be on the bike and to just be out in some nice weather. And then in March, I took a trip to the National Ice Core Lab in Denver, Colorado, and decided to share with you a little bit about what it is that I do for my job and what it is that I look at when I'm looking at ice core samples. So I kind of talked about what it is that I'm looking at and how I analyze the ice and look for ice deformation indicators and things like that. And so that was kind of fun, a little bit of a change of pace from the usual content. Following that, I posted a video of my third attempt to the geographic center of Arizona, which again was a failure, but also a learning experience. And so that was another fun trip. I went back to the same place that I tried for my first attempt and made it much further, but was turned around when I reached the Verde River, which was incredibly swollen and impassable. Posted a video all about putting some new handlebars on the CRF 300. And then in May, I finally reached the geographic center of Arizona. I published my fourth video, my fourth attempt, where I was able to make it via the Twin Buttes trailhead and a 24-mile hike, which, by the way, I did while sick with COVID and didn't know it. So definitely don't recommend hiking 24 miles with 5,000 feet of gain in the desert sun while sick with COVID. No bueno. Following my trip to the geographic center, I put out a video at the end of May, a 1-year review of my CRF 300 LS, which I tried to be as detailed as possible, and I got a lot of great feedback from that video, people thanking me for providing such hopefully non-biased input there and just sort of what my experience has been. And then in June, my partner and I took a trip to Spain. So this is a place she's always wanted to go, and we had some family that happened to be over there at the time. And so we traveled to Malaga, Spain. We explored a bunch of national parks. I hiked the El Caminito del Rey, which is that famous cliffside trail. Really awesome. I posted a video about that. We popped down to Morocco for an overnight, spent a day in Tangier, which incidentally was my last continent, Africa. So I got to check off my last continent, all 7 continents now visited. So that was it was an amazing trip. And I didn't post much about it just because it was a holiday and it was just really fun. The next 5 or 6 videos were all dedicated to my summer Colorado Moto camping trip. So just as I've done in previous years, I spent multiple days journeying up to Colorado and then spending time in the mountains and then coming back. And I decided to take the Himalayan this year again, and I had a wonderful time. It was just a blast. I spent 2 days getting up there, going through all sorts of fun places of Arizona and Colorado, got to Central Colorado, ran a race in the mountains that my friend was directing, and then I spent 2 days hiking 14ers. I hiked North Maroon and Pyramid Peak, which are two of the most difficult 14ers of the 58. Pyramid Peak legitimately terrified me. It was probably the most difficult I've ever done so far. I have not done Capital yet. Came back, and in August I posted a video on 4 years on the Himalayan and sort of my reflections on how it's been as an adventure bike, and also kind of my motivation for thinking about moving ahead and selling it and buying something new. And then in September, I finally took the CRF 300 LS down to Schnebly Hill Road in Sedona, which is sort of my rite of passage. I try to take every one of my new bikes up that road. It's a very fun, rocky, sort of technical road that's a real challenge to get up. And it was time to take the CRF up it. And I had a blast. I didn't drop the bike, but I did make it to the top successfully. And other than a bee sting on my neck, I made it out alive without any major issues. I took a trip with the Himalayan out to Sycamore Point, which was a beautiful spot about 50 miles from here. Just had a wonderful day, just exploring some remote places out there. Got some good drone footage. And then in September, as I was starting to get back into running and trying to get back into shape, I decided to do a Century ride on my Specialized cross bike. And so in the spirit of the same ride I did a few years ago down Lake Mary Road, I took my bike 50 miles out and 50 miles back, and I was really happy with how it went. I did it in just a smidge over 7 hours with several thousand feet of climb, and so I think it worked out really well, and I decided to post a video about it. I posted a video in early October of upgrading the ECU on the CRF. That's something that I've been struggling with, trying to decide if I wanted to do it, but I finally got to the point where the twitchy throttle was just frustrating me, so I upgraded the ECU, and sadly, it didn't make a huge difference, so kind of is what it is. I guess I'm glad I did it, but also it probably wasn't worth the $200 for the ECU. And that brings us up to the last two videos. And so in mid-October, just a few weeks ago, I went down to the Phoenix area twice. And the first time I went down to test ride a demo Himalayan 450, one of the new Himalayans. And it was a really great experience. It was a great bike. I have a deposit on one. I still don't know if that's the bike that I'm going to end up with, but I was pleasantly surprised with how much I liked that bike. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did, and I really enjoyed it. So I posted a video about that. And then I also got to fire up and sit on and sort of play around a little bit with one of the new CF Moto Ibex 450s. I did not really take it out. I did not get to take it out on a full test ride because it wasn't officially licensed yet. But I did get to fire it up and kind of play with the settings and get a feel for it and kind of feel its weight and things like that. So I also have a deposit on one of those as well. So yeah, and that brings us up to the last video. Just last weekend, I was gonna do potentially an iron butt ride, and I just wasn't feeling it. So I decided instead to just go down the road here to Sunset Crater, Wupaki National Monuments and do one of my favorite loop rides where I did the 50-mile ride around the parks and hiked up to Doney Mountain and yeah, really just soaked it up. And it was a great way to round out my YouTube year and a great video to end on. There was a lot of adventures that I did this year that I did not document, that I kind of just did for me. And I think I've found a good balance now where I've got a nice balance of stories and adventures I share with all of you, but also the ones that I kind of keep closer to my chest that are kind of just for me or for my family. So yeah, I really like kind of this steady state that I've reached, this equilibrium of what I'm putting out and kind of what I'm enjoying on my own. And so I hope that still gives some entertainment to all of you out there watching and the new subscribers. And I apologize if I'm not putting out more material, but that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in over the last 12 months, and I look forward to sitting in this same place 12 months from now. And please do check out Treks to Nowhere if you're interested in some of my more remote adventures, and check out the podcast, Treks to Nowhere, as well on all the normal streaming platforms. And I'll let you know when I have progress on my next book. And for now, as always, take care and be safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.